Elle, Haigh, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Liverpool. I'm going to rip off what you've got on LinkedIn. The people will be able to see if your eyes go like that. And it's a total lie, or you can correct me. But with more than 10 years of experience in high-performing teams, you are a director at an Agile consulting firm and you're a delivery lead at a Fintech Start-Up funded by the N Brown Group, a leading digital fashion retailer. You specialize in helping organizations and teams in highly regulated industries such as fintech, water, aviation, aerospace, and big pharma. You help them adopt lean, agile principles and practices that suit their specific needs and challenges. You've successfully streamlined operations, achieved significant cost savings, and implemented agile methodologies as an associate consultant in some of the UK's largest projects and FTSE 100/250 companies. I won't mention the other bits there.
I'm regretting having such a massive bio right now.
It's all right. You're passionate about enabling positive change and continuous improvement through effective SLT coaching and communication, collaboration and stakeholder management. Right now, your mission is to embed business agility and positive value delivery culture into somewhere and the wider M Brown Group and its customers. Sounds like a pitch, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's what it's meant to be. Your LinkedIn is meant to be your opening pitch, right? Especially if you've got your own consultancy, which you did. And I'm not doing that at the moment, but I have done that for a while. So
before diving into all of the fun stuff, depending on what your idea of fun is, I can't not really talk about your most recent adventures.
I know. Yeah,
so,
I thought this would come up.
You've recently completed, I'm going to call it an iron person.
I don't mind calling it an Ironman because, like, you call a woman, it's got a prefix of a W-O before the man.
Right,
it's
okay.
like, an iron, the iron part is the tough part of what you're doing.
Right.
And
I'm trying to...
It's a brand, right? It's like Coca-Cola or something.
Fair enough if you're happy with that. So you recently completed an Ironman, and then I was trying to work out what you did afterwards because that sounded even worse. So I will let you tell the whole story.
Yeah, this is bad planning on my part for sure because I booked them so far apart. I didn't realize that they were actually only a week apart when it came around to it. But I completed an Ironman out in Sweden, which is a huge challenge and mental and physical stuff, all of that. And then 5 days later, I got on a plane to India and cycled across the Himalayas.
Was that organised or just you got on a bike on your own?
It was a holiday, believe it or not.
Well, you booked to do that?
Yeah, I actually chose, to do that as a holiday.
Like some sort of self-punishment? Or...
I really enjoy things like this. Like, it's an experience that you never get to have anywhere else. It is literally a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You know?
I'm not even going to touch Agile for now because I like that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Like, what was the Ironman like? How did you fuel? What was your kit?
So many people overthink all of that, I think. And like, the fueling's really important and you really do have to like work on that. But it was insane and probably one of the best days of my life. And I went into it before I started. I said, don't ever let me do a full Ironman again. And I say this having signed up for Leeds Ironman yesterday.
Okay.
So...
bit of a difference between Sweden and Leeds.
Yeah, massive, but a massive in the course, massive differences in the course. And the way my brain works, I can't just do, I can't do the same things over and over again. I'm not trying to get faster at doing an Ironman. It has to be something radically different to challenge me. So I'm doing another one. But it's difficult. It's really, really tough. It's mental endurance more so than physical endurance. I think, you can train your body over and over again. And it's that continuous training that you do. Like it's not like you just train to do an Ironman, like if that makes sense. You're just doing continuous small bits of swimming and improving your stroke, and then you're doing continuous bits of running and improving your run, and you're doing some low and slow runs. And then all of a sudden, by the end of it, you've got this cumulative ability to keep going, and that's it.
And is it something you've always been interested in, that sort of endurance, or
no?
Okay. Was
18
it like
months ago, I couldn't even swim.
Okay.
So I think you have to set something that you don't think you can do to be able to force yourself to learn how to do something. And just true in everything we do, I guess, as well. I do believe in some of that as well. Like, you have to set something that's outrageously ambitious for yourself to be able to force a pattern where you can start trying to change things.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I didn't know how to swim. I'd never run more than 5K, and my 5K was about 45 minutes at that point.
Yeah.
I was cycling pretty regularly. I'd raced bikes on crit races, which again is very, very different to 180K.
What race, sorry?
criterium races.
right,
So
okay.
like racing around a small circuit that's
Right,
about
okay.
a kilometre long.
You're right, yeah.
So really technical, really fast, really gritty, sort of pushing into people, that kind of thing. So short, sharp and fast, like 40-minute races. So it's a whole different ball game going into something like this. And I knew it was going to be a different challenge. But yeah, I didn't know how to do any of it, and I had to learn, and that's the fun of it for me.
And did you do like triathlon, half Ironman, or just?
I signed up first of all to a half Ironman.
Okay. Where was that?
That was in Elsinore in Denmark,
Okay.
just outside of Copenhagen. Again, absolutely unreal and
Yeah,
super beautiful place. And I love the idea of triathlon tourism as well, and like
running
actually seeing the place that you're going to, and that makes it more fun, right? Like having something different about what you're doing.
I watched the Lanzarote one a couple of
Nice.
years ago. Just happened to be there on the day, and that one looked good. But from what I understand, it's one of the harder ones. They're all hard. I mean, don't get deny them, but because of the wind,
Yeah.
apparently the cycle is horrible there.
Yeah. It's pretty hilly, I think, as well. So
Yeah,
it's a big
but it was
old
amazing
one.
to see people doing it, all shapes and sizes. Like
Yeah,
people were just
that's-
cracking on and getting it
And
done.
it's a race against yourself, you know,
Yeah.
right? Like there's like the cycling stuff I'd done before is very much a team sport, and you need to be part of a team, and you need to be working together, and you need to be a unit. With triathlon, it's just you against you, and literally nobody cares. It's like you've got people that can do it in like 9 hours, and you've got people that are just making it in under 16, and some people that don't complete it. There's like about an 80% completion rate. You know, more often than not, there's over 200 people that don't finish.
Yeah, it seemed very community driven as well. And I was like really jealous because everyone was knocking about in their t-shirts in the restaurants, and after I was like,
Oh, there's a big cult thing
It was all like
vibe with
little
it, like
tattoos.
everyone
You
with a
got-
tattoo.
you getting the tattoo
No,
or-
absolutely
no.
not. Like again, it's a brand. Like I wouldn't tattoo Coca-Cola on myself, so
fair
I'm not
enough.
going to tattoo Ironman on myself. So.
And then just touch on what was the Indian experience like?
Unreal. Like
And what was it? Sorry, I should.
so we were in a place called Ladakh, which is up in the Himalayas. So it's the Indian part of the Himalayas.
Yeah.
It's very much a military controlled area. It's right on the borders of Pakistan and that China-Tibet border there, and Myanmar down the far end as well. So it's called the land of the high passes. So like you're going up and over passes of like 6,500 meters.
Pretty flat then.
Yeah, pretty low down. They don't call it the world's rooftop for a reason, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, and yeah, it's wild, right? Because you're so connected to everything right now. Like we work in technology, we, you know, we're constantly on our phones, like it's in our hand, or like for now, you've got notes right there, like in front of you. You know, we've got microphones, we've got everything you're surrounded by is technology, and the thing that really got to me on that trip was like getting on a bike and just riding. And you just get on a bike and ride, and there's nothing, literally nothing. You'll see cars, and that's about it. I had my phone in my back pocket, and that was probably the only connection I had. And there was no signal whatsoever, not even with a local SIM card. You didn't get anything. So it was just taking pictures, and I was using my phone as a camera, and that was the only function of it. But really having that opportunity to engage with people and talk to the people that were on the trip with me and look up and just feel and experience being somewhere completely separate and completely different to everywhere else, and seeing people that are completely disconnected and trying to understand their life and how that's different was quite profound and quite like, like I needed the space from life right now. And yeah, I think I spent all my time training, so the physical aspect of it didn't really affect me so much. And I'm so used to putting my body through hell for the last sort of year or so, and I've been constantly fatigued and feeling it, that I didn't really feel the effects of altitude. Maybe I did, but I was ignoring it the same way I ignore my body being fatigued. But a lot of the guys on the trip really suffered. There was like maybe 20 out of 40 of us were suffering with severe altitude sickness. And
was it A to B or like circle? Like you went?
it was like a circuit, and we came back round. So we started off in Leh at 3,500 meters, and then we peaked out at 5,000 meters.
And we were on roads, like trail.
It was meant to be off-road. It was meant to be trail.
Okay.
But somehow we landed the luckiest gig ever because they were laying the road in front of us.
Like a
we woke up
game.
one morning and there was a brand new tarmac road. I'm not even kidding.
And did you set your own bike or they?
No, they provided the bikes for us, and they were pretty different to like the bikes I would ride, but nothing bad about them. It's just I'm used to a very like high-end bike, I guess. And it was actually kind of nice to be on a hybrid kind of and just relaxed riding and not really pushing myself or trying too hard and just literally enjoying the moment. So but it was amazing, absolutely amazing. Like, highly recommend going to that part of the world if you can. It's so untouched still at the moment. Then you know that, like, if I say Ladakh to people don't generally know it. Unless you're from India, you probably wouldn't know it. And just having that experience and just being able to be sort of really present is special.
And you were raising money for charity for the Ironman or for both?
I kind of did it for both, but it was specifically for the Ladakh trip, just because we were supporting the UNHCR movement in Delhi, which is a refugee arm of the UN. So we actually went and spent time at the refugee centre whilst we were there as well, and got to hear people's experiences and stories and what they were doing.
And is that Just Giving page still open?
It's that page is still open.
I can put it in the
thanks.
In the
That's much appreciated.
description.
The weird thing about that I never knew, and this is really interesting, is India does not recognise refugees. So they will never get a residency and they'll never have something. So even like in the UK, we have programs where people can become citizens and things like that. India doesn't have that. Refugees are not registered people. They cannot have a bank account. They cannot have any way to access support whatsoever. And yet India has one of the biggest displacements of people because of, if you look at the environment and the countries surrounding it that are in political dispute, generally they come to India.
I have been there. It's definitely an interesting country. What in terms of those adventures, is there anything next? Have you booked anything in?
So literally yesterday, I was feeling really lost actually, because I had like no direction all of a sudden. I've had such a big thing to aim towards for so long that I felt a bit like empty coming out the back of it, and it was a real big low straight after. And I feel a bit lost, like I can't engage in anything. And then Leeds Ironman was announced, and something kind of clicked in me that there's something really nice about being in your own bed before a race, and not having to travel too much. But also, it scares me. It scares the absolute living daylights out of me. It is probably going to be one of the toughest Ironman courses in Europe, just purely because of the terrain. Like Yorkshire's pretty hilly.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified of hills. I don't ride on hills. I actively avoid it at all costs. And I knew if I was going to do another Ironman, I needed to do something that was so different that it would like A, scare me, and B, motivate me to do something different and change some of my behaviors and patterns so that I could do something.
And when is that?
Next July.
Next July. Oh, at least it won't be hot. I'm
just hoping it's not going to be wet. That's the only problem.
Yeah. All right. It's called the Everyday Agile podcast, so
should
we're
probably talk about that.
Probably gonna have to talk about that a bit. So in that context, in that regard, what's the journey been? I know a little bit. We discussed before the record, and I listened to you on the Virtually Agile podcast with Chris Stone.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that you used to be cabin crew and work for an airline, etc. But go into as much or as little detail as you want. And I can put that episode in the description as well. But how did you get to the point of being where you are today? Yeah,
so I guess it's a bit of an abnormal route when you speak to kind of most Agilists who've come from generally a tech background or, something that's kind of in that space. I was a cabin crew member for Virgin Atlantic for 10 years and EasyJet just before that as well. So the interesting thing was leaving that and going into the normal world when COVID hit.
Yeah.
The regular civilian world is kind of like people that come from the military, I guess. You've been in a uniformed organization, you've worked in an operational capacity, and then you're all of a sudden in an office-based environment.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
And it's difficult and it's interesting. And I left there and went to the water industry and worked at Yorkshire Water. And they were going through an agile transformation at the time. Now, I had a gift in that I'd been involved in some projects at Virgin already, going through a digital transformation and understanding, how we interacted with our customers and how that affected our onboard services and things like that. So I'd already been part of agile teams. And
so what did you, sorry, because people will wonder, because it's been quite a quick,
it's
like you're talking about 2020, it's 2024 now. What did you join that water organisation as?
A project coordinator at the time.
Because I think that's important because people think people just jump.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with
And I think the interesting thing was I actually applied to be an apprentice because I genuinely left thinking, I have no skills. I have nothing. I'm doing completely career change. I just turned 30. I I had no idea how I was going to navigate outside of this aviation world that I'd been part of for so long. And that's tough. That's really tough because mentally you've got to be strong enough to know who you are. And I wasn't. At that point, I really had no idea that I had any kind of skill or experience that would be valuable to anyone. So I thought I needed to do an apprenticeship, like 13 grand a year, like kind of apprenticeship. And I was just really lucky that I'd applied for this with Yorkshire Water. And at the same time, there was another role open. It was a full-time role. And I applied for both and I got interviews for both. So of course I took the normal job rather than the apprenticeship at the time, you know? And as soon as I joined, I actually realized I know an awful lot more than maybe even some of the people that were already going through this change, because I've been part of an environment that works in that way. And I had a really great Agile coach there that was in as a contract consultant who kind of took me in his wing a bit as well. And we talked through some stuff and he was like, you know, an awful lot of this. I could really do with some help in the team areas. And I struggled with the line manager I had at the time because he had different ideas of what he needed and wanted me to do. And I really wanted to be working with the teams and really like doing what I've always done and being part of a group of people that wanted to solve problems. And that's what your entire life is as a crew member as well, right? Every single day is a different day. And you're working part of a team all the time. And I really wanted to do that. And I really wanted to help. And that door was getting closed on me very quickly. And that was continuously happening up until about 9 months in. And the contractor that I'd been kind of talking to had moved on and gone into a permanent role somewhere else and asked if I would join him to help do a transformation at a different company. And I couldn't say no. At that point, I knew there was something in me. And I went straight in as a Scrum Master there, as a senior project manager, I think it was named as they were going through the transformation. And I knew I could do it. And it wasn't like something, you know, I think you limit your own progress sometimes by just assuming because you don't have the specific job title that you don't have experience of doing this stuff. And it's something that comes so innately to people that work in an operational space. Hence, like the military stuff for yourself is a very similar thing. If you work in an operational space, it's so second nature to be part of a team and start acting as part of a team. And it's really starting to go back and dissect what made that happen. That'll help you be successful in a role where you can coach other people to work together.
And how do you now manage the inevitable, but these aren't my opinions, you've never written a line of code in your life, or you're not technical. Like, how have you navigated that side of it? Because it is important. Like, there's no...
It is. I think I've been lucky in that I've found environments that haven't really questioned that so much, and they've understood that the core skills I'm bringing are the skills that they're lacking in that team. Not, you know, does it matter that I don't actually write code? If I wrote code, it'd be shit up to what those people, sorry, language.
That's all right. Say what you want.
It'd be awful up to what those guys are doing, right? And they can do it well, so why do I need to? And I think that's the kind of core aspect of Agile anyway, is that if you're giving full autonomy to a team, then you don't need to know what they know. But you have to take time to understand what they do and why it affects them. Yeah. And it's not that I don't and haven't tried to write code. I can and I would. I'm just really not that great about it. I'm great at it. I've done some courses and stuff, and I actually went to university and did, whilst I was flying, I did some open university courses, and a big module of that was starting to code.
Yes,
I've gone and got found experience, but I've never been a software developer.
No.
And I've never done that. And I think the biggest thing at the moment is that actually software's pretty good at doing the Agile stuff now. Like, they don't need as much help, right? They still need constant continuing coaching and things, but they generally get it in a lot of the software houses I've been part of. But it's the rest of the organization that hasn't caught on yet and that hasn't kind of started involving themselves. And it is that kind of wider organizational shift that needs to happen, because your software teams can fly, but if your finance, your sales, everywhere else isn't going with them.
Procurement.
Normally. Yeah, exactly. All of these things. If HR even, if they're not on board and they're not moving with those teams, then what's the point in one team flying and the rest still stuck in a certain pattern? You're gonna start restricting progress. You're gonna start restricting that ultimate goal of having value to what you need, right? So it's kind of been a gift in that way as well, because I'm not that technical. I end up in teams that aren't necessarily software quite a lot, which makes it really interesting. But it also means, because I've had that connection from software from when I first started out doing this, very quickly I can connect the dots between the two and go, oh, you should actually just be part of that team. Like, I don't know why you're sat in a separate part of the organization. Let's try and integrate you a bit more, and kind of breaking down some of those barriers as well. And it means that whenever I have to think about something that's from a technical aspect, whether that's physical engineering in some of the areas I've been in as well, industrial engineering, or, you know, patterns with water services or customer service, any of those things, I have to put it in a relatable sense in my head. I have to translate that.
Yeah.
I can't operate in a technical space in my head. So I will automatically start using different ways of explaining something. So I'll talk about football, or I'll talk about, you know, or sports or cycling. And I'll go, so when we're cycling, we do this as well. Or when I was on an aeroplane, we do this as well.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately more relatable. So you can connect back to those stakeholders that also don't have that technical aspect to it, and your product owners that are trying to get the best outcomes for the customer ultimately. It's easier to have that connection then.
Yeah.
When you can do that.
Cool. So when you go into somewhere, what's on your mind for the first like 90 days? What does that look like?
Just seeing what's happening. And I know that apart from the current place that I'm at, everywhere else has been very much like take in as much as I can to start with, and really start to see what's happening and see what those interpersonal connections look like, and just what the structure is. I think if you go in too soon and you just change everything straight away, you have no idea where you've started from.
Yeah.
And you need to get like a bit of a baseline of what's happening around you, and what like general culture looks like, and just how people interact without interfering to start with. I think there's always an expectation, especially as a consultant, when you go into somewhere, that you're just going to go in and go, this is what you need. And the problem with doing that, and when consultants do that and go straight in and change everything, is that they're just taking a pattern from somewhere else. It's not about where you are right now, and it's not about what those people actually need. So having conversations with people, putting lots of one-to-ones in, and just trying to listen and understand where the pain's coming from, and get to a bit more of a root cause than just symptoms of problems. Because I think we can implement Scrum and it fixes some symptoms, but it doesn't fix that core why and the core problem that the organization is generally having.
And how do you navigate the pushback of, they're just another consultant, why are they booking in a one-to-one? Like, what value is it to me? How do you combat that? Or from you,
That's a relationship, isn't it? And this is the thing. This is the bit you've got to get really good at as a consultant. You're building a partnership and a relationship with that person, and they've got to find trust in you. And it's having that open communication and transparency, just like you teach your teams. If you're not doing that for yourself and you're putting on this persona, you're going to have problems. You're going to come into problems where they're going to start not trusting you, or not listening to what you've got to say, or not wanting to take on, you know, the help that you're trying to give them. And I think this is definitely a symptom of stuff I see from some of the bigger consultancies that you go in and work with, is that there's this, I've been through consultancy school, I've got the perfect face, I act in the perfect corporate way. And I started practicing extreme vulnerability and extreme empathy with that as well.
What does that mean? What do those two mean?
Being as open and as real as possible, like talking about the things that you would never traditionally think is a corporate thing to talk about, right? Like talking about the fact that I do have ADHD and I will go off on tangents, and I'm sorry if I do. It's just because I'm excited and I want to help you, and feel free to call me out on it. Like, and being completely open about some of these things with people. And when I'm really not feeling great on a day, I'll explain, like, I'm not feeling so great today. It might take me a bit longer to process things, and just being as openly empathetic to them as well. And I find that builds that relationship much faster. Being vulnerable and showing that vulnerability gives a space for other people too. It doesn't always work, and it's not always like, some people are really taken aback by it. And I explain that that's how I am, because it really helps me understand an organization as well, is to get emotionally involved in the job, right? And a lot of people protect themselves from that. And
I'm smiling because
they do though. A lot of people do protect themselves from that. And that's a problem. And how are you ever meant to help? Because it is people ultimately who are helping, right? You know, organizations might hire us and they have a problem that they want to fix, or they want to make more revenue, or they want to change the structure of their organization. But when we're talking about that, all we're talking about is people. Everything is people, and understanding that human factor of it is a big part of that.
It's interesting, because sometimes I think, you know, you go into an organization and people, and this is just my bias probably, and my lack of openness. When I go to the doctors, I don't want them to be emotionally vulnerable. I want them to solve my problem.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be psychologically safe. I don't care what type of day they're having because I'm in pain. So if they started unloading on me, I'd be like, well, what are you doing?
There's a limit to that though, isn't there? If that's affecting that doctor's decision on how your treatment path is, you'd want to know that beforehand.
I don't know if I would, but I know what you mean.
Do you know?
Yeah,
I think the doctor's a hard one because it's so uniquely personal and it's a thing. But if you came to me and said, like I need some help with this part of my organization, I'd be like, cool, just bear with me a minute. I'm mentally in a different place right now and I just need to, or I'll have a conversation with you in half an hour. I just need to go and have a cup of tea first.
Yeah.
And, and it's some of these things, and this comes massively back to my aviation background, right? In that if you're not performing as an individual, you can't perform as a team. And unless that team understand where you're at, it's really hard to know whether they can make a decision to involve you or something in that decision-making process as well.
Yeah. Have you ever found that a difficult conversation when you're, I'm always hesitant, but the point of these conversations is to have open conversations. So when you're on a day rate, you're on a day rate.
Yeah.
Like, are you as open with your emotions and vulnerability when people know you're on, however much a day? Because sometimes sorry to interrupt, but sometimes that emotion gets cut out because they don't care.
Yeah.
You're here to do a job.
And there is a balance. There is an absolute balance to some of that. And it is reading the person and it depends on the development of that relationship in some months as well. But I always rather go in fully open and then if that's not working, change the tactic on that rather than something else. But I've been lucky that I've always had a team of consultants that I've gone in with and I've worked through an agency as well. So like if I was working for you, for instance, I would have that conversation with you first and be like, I'm really struggling today. How can we handle this together? So there's a barrier and I prefer that kind of entry into an organization than going direct. I am in a permanent role now and that's different to navigate again, but actually I'm in an environment where I feel like I can be 100% myself, which is so important.
I think that's really important.
Yeah.
I would never want anyone. The only thing I'm massive on is communication and people, although some of what I say is pretty tongue in cheek, but the people who know me and know how we work know that I may say something flippant on here. But when it comes down to it, if there's a problem, if I don't know about it, I can't help, and I'll always try and help.
Yeah.
But it is a fine line when you're on the client side and you're working with, people who assume how much you're on, and most of the time they're wrong anyway. Yeah. And they go, oh, what?
Or they've seen
psychological safety.
Or they've seen how much the agency is getting paid as well, and assume that that's your final take home or something like that. Yeah.
Which is definitely not. Hello folks, sorry to interrupt this video, but if you have got this far, it would really help if you did subscribe to the channel. Because it's face-to-face, it makes convincing people a lot easier to travel up all the way to Liverpool to record in this lovely studio. So, like I said, please subscribe and thanks for watching. You've mentioned it, so I feel like it's safe ground, the ADHD thing. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? What is it? Has it been something that's been diagnosed? Is it a journey that you're on at the moment?
It's definitely a journey, and this year has been a big year, and touched on more of the depressive side of ADHD as well, more than I've ever had to face before, and handling that and in the workplace has been really interesting because I think when you're flying, you're never with the same people all the time. Literally you can fly with one person and never see them for 5 years. So coming into an environment where it's stable and you're always working with the same people is a different thing to navigate with ADHD. And I think that learning curve over the last few years has been huge. And
that learning curve, is it come from people being more open about it and you going, actually, I see some of those traits in myself, or is it something you've always known? What was the trigger, I suppose?
So it was around 2020 when things became a lot more obvious.
Okay.
And I think that it was that shift into a more normal environment that kind of made it more obvious. But the signs were there from when I was a child. I was disruptive in school. I had a massive lack of concentration. I was in the naughty boys group in school, that whole special measures group that needed additional support. But I was really high performing. I was in all of the top sets and all of the things. So I was never really looked at as a problem, I guess. But I would cause problems in school. Like I was disruptive in lessons. And most of the time it was because I'd already done the work. I never did a piece of homework. I was terrible, like absolutely terrible for it. I got on the bus and did my homework on the bus in the last 5 minutes before I turned up to school. And even sometimes I just didn't do it. And I got really good at making excuses and lying about why I hadn't done my homework. And when you start like unraveling your journey and you're like, I am going through therapy and I will continuously go through therapy for the rest of my life now, because there's a lot to unpack and there's a lot to go through. Navigating a lot of that, I'm going to need help. I'm going to need help navigating it because it's a lot to understand and a lot to take on. And it's hard to get a handle on, and it is hard to get a handle on. And it can elevate some of that emotional side of me massively. And, you know, where I've been scared to be emotional and I've masked it over the years, learning to unravel that and be my authentic self is a big part of what makes me successful now. And having that like emotional authenticity is huge.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same with ADHD, but I know with ASD, it's fair to say that females mask it better. I don't know if that's, I genuinely don't know if that's the same with ADHD or not. But.
Yeah, it said so, and it said that it manifests differently in women as well, and just because of the way we're brought up and the way we're treated and, you know, things like that. I think some of my experiences are probably more so where it's more like the masculine orientation of things, where I'm quite obviously hyperactive. And even the way I speak quite a lot is quite fast and quite direct and quite, you know, but I will go off on tangents a lot. And so there's some obvious signs there. But I have got good at masking who I am through that, if that makes sense. I'm faking confidence and things like that through that hyperactivity and sort of using it to my own advantage, but really completely destroying myself underneath. And I think that's what leads to kind of the depressive side as well, because you kind of lose sense of who you are and what's important to you, and coming back and finding those things in the workplace for sure. What motivates you. If not, it's really hard to concentrate. It's really hard. If something's not motivating you anymore or not interesting you, or, you know, not hooking onto your goals, that's even more heightened in ADHD. And I lose interest like that. I can just check out, and I will start causing chaos. And I know that as soon as I start checking out and I get bored, I'll start causing problems. And I have to be really aware of that. I have to be super self-aware. And it's important for me to make my clients aware of that as well, in that I'm only going to stay here as long as I can help you, because as soon as I know I've done as much as I can to help you, I'll just go cause problems for you elsewhere. And I don't want that to happen for either of us. So I need to be honest with you as soon as that happens. And we need to start finding a solution to either get someone else to help you with the next part of your journey, or we figure out a way that I can help you in a place that's sustainable and actually motivates me as well.
Yeah, and that makes sense now you've said it, with the being, you know, completely open with people. I suppose that all circles back to you only want to be there if you can add value and help them, and being upfront about that is really important. So I appreciate the openness, and I'm sure other people will as well. From your experience, and it can be from any of the places you've been at, you know, what 3 ingredients or 3 to 4 in the Agile kitchen do organizations need to benefit from agility, from what you've seen?
I think the core of it in the most successful organizations I've been in is a really strong set of values. And the one I'm in right now has some of the best values, and they genuinely live by it. And every week there's an entire hour session where we talk about our value heroes, people who have really done things that align to our values, and constantly go back onto that. And if you've got those strong sense of people values, it's really easy to kind of start molding your practices around that, right? And if you've got those people values that you're living by and you're encouraging and they're really strong, it's far easier for people to see their direction and how they can influence what you're doing, and how they can feel happy in their role. And we know that, right? Agile is a big part of that. If someone's happy in their role, it's a lot easier to be part of a team, and it's a lot easier for them to turn up to work, and a lot easier for them to be productive and really want to find the right things to do. So having those really strong core values, I think, is a massive thing. And it's going to be different for every company. Like Virgin's one is like customer is key, right? So we used to have one, the core value for a long time was brilliant basics, magic touches. And that one will stay with me. That was the very start of my career with them. And it was all about, like, as long as you're providing the brilliant basics, like everything's just right at the basic level. But then you add some little magic touches, which is you, like you are the magic touch, and that was drilled into you. Then you're living by our core value that you're doing things right. So as long as you're kind of focused around that's what they look for, and I think that's really key. Having a really strong strategy in place to show this is our future, this is where we're going, this is what we're trying to achieve, from an outcome-based model. And I think that's more and more becoming like prevalent conversation, like when we look on LinkedIn and things like that. I think people are shifting more to that outcome-based stuff, which is great, and it's finally taking root in a lot of organizations, rather than specifically what you're doing, like features and stories and all this kind of stuff. More that like what we're actually trying to achieve here, and let our people go ahead and achieve that. And having a strategy in place that really is clear on that, I think, is another important part that aligns back up to those values, right? And it's around those people aspects. A big one that is definitely sitting with me at the moment, and I think you popped it in there as another question, so it kind of covers off both, but that I'm learning from this is that we're not going to get away from hierarchy. We talk about hierarchy-less organizations, but if you're going in to try and transform or change an organization, you're not going to get away from it. It's so innately ingrained in everything that organizations have and do, and it's such a cultural expectation going into an organization that you're not going to get rid of it. And it's how we actually decide to work within that. And I think you have to make sure your agile folk and your delivery folk are in a leadership position. Now, whether that's that your leaders become those agile folk and take on that responsibility, and they are your core, I think they should be probably your core line managers. Doesn't necessarily mean for the people that are in that team that they're in, but maybe for other people around there. But I think so often Scrum Masters, Agile coaches are hired at almost a off the side kind of role. Like they don't have any line management responsibilities. They're not really in a specific part of the business. And it's becoming problematic, right? And actually, I think we need to sort of ingrain ourselves in the culture that's not going to change that quickly.
What do you mean by it's becoming problematic? Like, let's crack that.
I think
you've got a drink there as well.
Yeah, I might need that at some point. Is it strong enough though? No. I think it's becoming problematic in that it's harder to show value for people that are in those roles specifically themselves, and also I think people are being hired at the wrong level because of that kind of, there's no line management responsibility. Organizations, especially older organizations, are generally still set up in that kind of, God, do I dare say this, the boomer time where, you have a hierarchy, you have that line management. And if it was set up back then, you're going to struggle to get away from that. And the only way you can get away from it is probably ingraining yourself initially and knowing you're the right person to do line management in a different way. I hate the term line management. It literally means you're in a line and they're managing you, right? Yeah. So it's a problem. And the only way we can do that is shifting that line management culture into coaching culture, and understanding that it doesn't need to be about that person's individual role. It's about the person and how we help them grow. Yeah. And we understand that as a team aspect, but the best way we can do that into an older organization is also to lift ourselves into those positions. So put ourselves in a position of line management in those.
It's a really good book, actually. It's only a short book. And I can't remember the guy's name, but I think it was from CIO to Chief Agility Officer, or from CTO to Chief Agility Officer. Basically, I'll as all the podcasters say, I'll link the description in the notes. It's basically summarizing what you just said, like taking some actual responsibility and having a Chief Agility Officer who is responsible and accountable for this stuff, rather than
or do we even need a different role, or do we shift our Chief People Officer to be that person? Yeah. And that's the side of it. I'm starting to shift more into the world that maybe we do align more with HR than we've let ourselves believe. And maybe that's actually where we should be adding more value. I'm not saying that we don't need dedicated sort of HR experts and legal people alongside working with us, but I think we can really work with people organizations and the side of the people aspect to do good things. Like, I think it's not we're not separate to it. And I had a conversation last night at Lean Agile Manchester about this, in that in the aviation industry, because you're operational and you're flying with different people all the time, your line manager has never been on an aeroplane most of the time. Their whole core role is to make sure your welfare is okay and that your career aspects, they can coach you and talk to you through those things, or they can point you in the right direction of people that you need, but they're never on the plane with you. And you have people who manage that flight and that service and, manage the aircraft itself as the captain and the safety. You're all responsible for all of those things as well, though. So although there's someone that's ultimately responsible, you have got that flat hierarchy on board an aircraft, and it's necessary. And the way they do that is displacing your actual line management completely from the airplane. Because it gives you that safe space to operate within the environment you're in. Yeah. And unless we take out line management from teams directly, like people within the same team having line managers, or then you're never going to get away from that like hippo effect, And I think that's the only way we can, because like I said, I don't think organizations are going to change their structure to not have complete lack of hierarchy. And it's how we actually make ourselves part of that so that we can positively influence from the inside.
I like that. I had another thing on my mind then, but it must have been a lie because I've forgotten it. You mentioned the sporting aspect or the physical aspect of where you draw inspiration from. But what else outside of the Agile bubble? Like where else you draw inspiration from? Books, podcasts, just, where do you draw energy from is probably a better question.
I think it's just people in general. And I know, I think my experience this year of life in general has taught me so much about people. And I think...
In a positive way, or?
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. And I think if I'm learning, it's only ever positive. And that is very much my outlook on life. If I'm learning, no matter how hard it is, no matter what's happening to me, it's a positive experience. But I just love talking to people, and I find it really easy to talk to people. Doesn't mean that I don't suffer with anxiety and all the other kind of traits of ADHD as well, and being in big groups. But I just love learning about other people's experiences, their job roles, what they do, how that affects them. And I just ask a million questions, and I take that into every single part of my day. And I think that comes back into my understanding and learning of the world, right? And I find that a big driver. So other people and just their conversations, their journeys, their stories. The Himalayas trip for me was all about the people that was on that trip and the conversations I had during that trip with people while we were completely disconnected. And I think that's why I'm drawn to sport, because during that sport you will have connections with people who are very similar to you and have got open minds and want to talk about different things. And my body's preoccupied, so my mind can be free to have those conversations. So I do, obviously I'm on LinkedIn and I'm quite sporadic with it. And I know you have lots of coaching things around that, and you write a lot of really good content around that as well. And I do love reading stuff on LinkedIn, and it does make me start thinking differently. I struggle to focus enough to watch and listen to anything that's kind of longer than a short podcast. So I do like podcasts, and I listen to them in the car generally when I'm driving out to client sites or, going on longer journeys. I struggle to read material like that. I really do. So I have to find it from different places. And like I said, for me, conversation is one of the biggest places I can have. And I think you get a much more rounded view. If 1,000 people watch a TED Talk or something like that, then they're all getting that one singular view of a conversation. Whereas if I'm going out and talking to 1,000 different people, I'm going to get a whole different realm of those things.
I like that. I don't, this isn't a politics podcast, but it just draws on the example. I'll listen to LBC, so it's like the phone-in show. Yeah. But I'll listen to an hour of James O'Brien, who's on one side of the fence, and I'll listen to Nick Ferrari, who's on the completely opposite side. Just you have to hear
different sides
to get to form your own opinion. Is there anything you've changed your mind about recently, which you never thought you would?
I think that bit about us being HR people. Yeah. I think I reject the notion of HR so violently in my body. And I think that's because I've had in certain organizations I've been in, I've seen some really bad practices and where people HR are there to support the company, right? And I think we can break down some of those barriers and make it about supporting the people as well.
Yeah.
Within that space of still supporting the company. And I think we have to do that. I think that is a big part of it. And it's been painful to shift to that because I'm like, oh, I don't want to call myself a people person. And there'll be people that work in a people environment that I don't want to say it's them. It's generally the organization and the way that principle's set up within an organization that causes those problems. And it's a cultural issue, right? And it causes cultural issues. But actually, I think we need to be working together a lot more closely. And ultimately, the best way you're going to get value out of your people is working together with your HR teams to do both that personal and well-being development alongside that team structural development and organizational development.
You mentioned Lean Agile Manchester. I think when I was scrolling through your LinkedIn post to gather inspiration for this, that you spoke there a couple of months ago, or a few months ago now probably. Is the speaking side, the meetup side, something you enjoy, something you want to do more of? Like what?
I think
what's the story there?
I think I'm still trying to find my voice right now, and I'm finding that hard. Like it's that self-confidence thing that I said coming out of the aviation industry and being one of many, the whole time. And there's almost especially with the Virgin Group, a knowing that there's like 10,000 people that apply for that job. So there's always like I'm replaceable feeling. And really understanding my own value is a journey at the moment. So I'm trying to find my voice because I know there's ways I can help. And I want to use my voice to help organizations and not just for like a benefit to me and not a cost benefit to me. I genuinely think we can help organizations with how we generally portray ourselves and give help to other Agile coaches and other leaders. So yeah, I'm trying to do a bit more of it. It doesn't come that naturally to me.
No.
All my confidence is definitely faked. And sometimes that's really hard and really draining. So I'm trying to find my space there. I'm trying to find my voice and get better at it. More because I want to be part of a community and help people than any kind of personal gain from it.
So I don't want to get all Stephen Bartlett on you, but you've just said your confidence is fake.
Yeah.
So how are you like actually doing at the moment?
I'm really anxious right now.
What, because of this or just in general?
This environment is quite anxiety driven right now. But in general, I'm not doing that great. Like I'm very good at pretending I'm happy. And I think that's a symptom of everybody that's in the world right now. We get good at putting things on Instagram and having the perfect life, but I don't think we're that great at saying we're not so good. So I'm trying to practice that. Like when people ask me if I'm okay, I say sometimes.
Okay.
It's been one of the best years of my life and it's been one of the worst. I've had those high highs and I've had those low lows. And I've had to make some big changes to try and find a place where I can be myself. So moving back into a permanent role was a big part of that. And I'm really happy to have found an incredible team that does support me and I can be open about and I can take time when I need time and be completely flexible with my diary and,
I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I don't know, obviously don't know you particularly well. But what I would probably say is if the whole self-confidence thing in a market, in the state of what the market is, going from one place to another, like you've got to take confidence in you. From what I understand, you got somewhere pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that's a receipt of, like if that wasn't the case, you would be, flapping around like a cat in a canal trying to find your next job.
Do you know what helped me with that? Really leaning into my rejection sensitivity. Like I'm terrified of being rejected.
Right.
And I just decided that I was going to kind of force myself to be rejected. So I applied for things that I thought I couldn't get. Like I applied for things that I thought, there is no way I'm going to get this. So I know I'm going to be rejected. And if I can control that rejection, I'm going to get better at this. Yeah. And then I had 3 offers on the table. Yeah. And I was like, oh.
But that's important to look back on and go, like, I am pretty good at.
Yeah, I'm good at this. And I am okay. And working with a therapist as well, like that's been a big thing this year is working with a therapist to kind of understand some of these things and work on me and that self-confidence inside of me, even if I can't necessarily portray it very well, and just act how I think a confident person would act. And once you get good at faking it, you start realizing it's not fake so much anymore.
It's got to be tiring though, hasn't it?
It can be exhausting. Yeah, it can be really exhausting. And I've had to battle with that for sure. And like we talked about like the kind of how you talk about the day rate thing and stuff. And sometimes I just have to pick up work at different times of the day. And I have to be honest about that quite early up, because I can do work really early in the morning sometimes, or I can do it really late at night, but I can't always, like that afternoon, I still have like a massive downturn on my dopamine levels. And my confidence and my decision-making skills just deteriorate so quickly by the afternoon that I need to take some space. But then I'll come back to things a couple of hours later after a rest, and I can get on with it better then. But it's just managing it. It is just understanding when you're taking it too far and need to take a step back.
I mean, I wasn't expecting this conversation to go down as deep as that, but I do appreciate it. And I'm sure there'll be people watching, listening, however they consume this, that, appreciate it just as much and more. I
think that's it. I portray as a very happy person and like an outgoing, confident person all the time. And that's not true. It's really not true. And I think being more vulnerable about that and in the space that I'm in and being able to do that, I am so much happier and I'm so much relaxed and much more relaxed. And it's hard, but it's doing really good things. And I think I'm able to help the company I'm in way more now that I can be myself.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it hasn't been too anxiety inducing. Try and create quite a nice environment here. Is there a question that I haven't asked which you wish I had?
I don't think so. I didn't expect it to go this way either. No, it's been nice. I've watched a lot of your stuff, and I like the way that you kind of make people comfortable to talk about different stuff as well. And I'm surprised you didn't bring up the LinkedIn post where I said the first rule of Agile is we don't talk about Agile.
Well, let's go into that, because I normally would, but then the whole Ironman thing came up. So yeah, what did you mean by that? So give us the context of that.
I think it's just such a word that ignites so many feelings in people right now, and has been doing for a little while. And it's, if you spend time on LinkedIn, which I know you do, and like I do, it's draining to read about Agile. And I think Agile as a term doesn't really mean anything, right? It's got all these principles and practices and methodologies and ways of thinking. And, but ultimately, it's just what can we do better and how can we help people? And I think the more that we focus on those kind of outcomes, then how do we become agile, the better we're going to help people. And the minute you say agile, it's going to evoke a reaction. If someone's a project manager, it can be a threatening space to be in. Because they might have been in a situation where they've got rid of all the project managers and brought a load of scrum masters in all of a sudden, which is bad practice, or you've had your role changed without being asked, or, any of those things. So I think if you're going to go in and do a transformation and you're an agile specialist, just try not to be an agile specialist. Be a people specialist. Be a humanist.
Cool. Yeah. What's next? Have you got anything to plug? Have you got anything to say? Anything else on your mind?
I don't think so at the moment. It's kind of nice coming in here without sort of an agenda on those things and without a direction of where I'm trying to get something out of it. It's just been nice to be able to kind of talk about what I feel this environment is in Agile and the experience that I've had. So yeah, nothing to plug, but.
No. Where can people reach out if you want them to, of course? Yeah,
I'm on LinkedIn, Elle Haigh, and yeah, I assume you'll tag that in there anyway. Yeah. But that's about it really. I don't kind of do anything else other than that. And then generally I hang out at the Lean Agile Manchester once a month. I think it's a really good community and a space that's growing, and they're trying to do things differently and get some new voices in there. So if anyone wants to come and join in there, the guys that are running it are really lovely and open
I think James.
To anything.
I think James is going to come on this at some point.
He's a great guy. He's a really great guy, and I think again it's that thing, doing the right thing for people. And like last night we were at North Coders and having some people that are just starting their journey in the tech world mixed with people that have got quite a lot of experience. It was actually a really good dynamic because we could help each other out and we could talk about our experiences, and it felt like you're giving back to something and helping people step off on the right course to start with. So it's just about paying back, I think, at the moment.
Perfect. Well, on that note,
thanks.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
thanks for the time. It's much appreciated. And I think people will get a lot out of that.
Thanks.
So thank you.
I'll write down a question for you to answer later.